We'll have more. We'll have more people joining us, I'm sure. Okay, welcome everyone. We got. I'm subbing for Alex. My name is Glenn Thornton. I'm the secretary this year, and Alex has got another. I think he's on another Zoom teaching something. I don't know. But welcome everyone, and Plano West Rotary. This is my first. I've been president twice, but I've never led a meeting with a Zoom. So I'm new to this. We're going to start as we always do with Mr. Sergeant at Arms Mike is going to go around the screen here and see if people want to brag about anything that's going on, kind of get to know each other. I know Alex really likes this time, 10 or 15 minutes here, 15, I guess. So we don't get to meet face to face. So it's a chance to kind of see what's going on, what are people doing. And so Mike, you take it away. You're muted, Mike. You're muted, Mike. There you go.
There we go. I can hear myself just fine. Okay, we'll start with Zane. If you have a brag you'd like to share with the club today.
Yeah, I started classes yesterday, so so far I'm liking my professors. So yeah, I'm excited for the rest of the week. I'm
glad that you at school and not me. Glenn, do you have a brag for today?
I do. So immediately after our meeting here, Michelle and I are headed down to Spicewood in the Austin area. We have friends down there, and they've been kind of quarantining, and we're going to be on one floor. They're going to be in another of their nice house overlooking the Pedernales River. So we're going to be down there for a couple of days. So looking forward to that.
All right, thank you. Joy, do you have a brag?
I know Joy does.
I spent a solid week with my my son, who is my baby, his wife, and our 2-year-old granddaughter last week, and I'm exhausted, but it was wonderful.
Thanks for sharing. Ike, how about a brag from you?
I'm doing keto. It is wonderful. Basically living off cookies, almond and butter, and cocoa. So
sounds good. Thank you. Roger, do you have a brag?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna get to go visit my son's house in Utah, his vacation house, with my brother and his wife and my sister-in-law and her husband. So that'll be a good time for us all to get together. We're all getting along in the tooth, so this will be a good thing. Y'all stay safe.
Thanks, Roger. Fred, how about you? You have a brag?
I just want to brag on the rain that we got. Luxury to start out with. I've never seen winds like that in Plano in a long time, but good soaking, and really needed it. Anyway, there wasn't a whole lot of damage either, so that's another thing that I'm thankful for. But in cooler temps.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I have a brag. My son, my baby, turned 21 yesterday.
Is that funnel cake expert?
One of them. They're both kind of funnel cake experts, but the other one is now living at home temporarily. So I have a full house again.
Thank you. Okay, Randall, do you have a brag?
Yes, Fred reminded me of the storm that we had a few nights ago, and I guess I can brag that my trees withstood the storm, unlike some of my other neighbors that did not. The trees were just completely taken out from the storm. And also the kids started school, and I'm proud to say that they're doing okay so far with the Zoom experience. So,
thank you. LaShawn, do you have a brag? You're muted. I don't know if you know that.
You can see my mouth moving, but couldn't hear. Thank you for educating me. Yeah, I was thinking my daughter is living with me now as of June while she's building a house. She's getting married next year, and it's been kind of nice to have her back home. back in her old room, and it just feels like old times.
And she still has the same curfew when she has to be in at night?
Yeah, all rules are the same. Yeah, 3113, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Thank you. I see Tom's hat is here. I don't know if Tom's here or not. Tom, you're on mute. I can see your hat. Yeah, there he is.
Okay, let's do it.
You have a brag?
No, not today.
Was
I got
glad.
up this morning. That's a brag.
You
Glad
logged
you're
on.
here. Okay, Rebecca.
Yeah, so like Randall's kids, mine started virtual learning, and we're off to actually a relatively smooth start. And specifically, my older daughter, who has dyslexia, has been reading just for fun in between her Zoom meetings. And this is truly a credit to the wonderful dyslexia services that she's receiving through Plano ISD, because this is a kid who hated to read 6 months ago, and now she thinks reading's fun. So we have some awesome educators in our school district, and I'm very grateful for them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. David.
Muted, David. There you go.
Good morning. My brag is that we have, we're getting ready to start the tutoring program, and we have 21 tutors to sign up that Jenny actually recruited to get signed up for the tutoring program for this year. So that's my brag. The kids are going to get educated and get help with their homework.
Thank you. Mr. Frankenfield.
Good morning or good afternoon. Yes, I have one brag. I want to brag about my 12-year-old grandson who has made money bidding on Nike shoes as they show up on eBay and selling them for a fortune after that. And now he's bought all the components and everything and is building his own computer. And the darn thing works, and he's 12 years old. Hell, I can't even run a computer. And he's building one.
That's pretty good. Dolly, you're muted, but do you have a brag? She may just pretend to be there. There she is. Hi, Dolly.
I don't have a brag today. Well, actually, I do. I want to piggyback off what David said about the tutoring program, and from the event that we had a couple of Saturdays ago, we connected with the Venus School District, and they are wanting to get involved in our tutoring program. So we are reaching far and wide. So that's a beautiful thing.
Thanks, Dolly. Hey, Clarence, assuming you're there and can unmute, how about a brag?
Well, I'm bragging on the good rain we had, helped my vegetable garden, and we're still eating a few tomatoes out of there, good black-eyed peas, collard greens, and kale. So it's fun to eat out of it.
Wow.
That's about it.
Thanks for the garden update. Camille, do you have a brag?
Yes. My oldest is going away to college Friday, moving in. Super happy.
Thank you. Carolyn?
No, not much really a brag. I start school next week through Zoom, and I'm just very anxious about it, but I'm going to do fine.
Something new. Thank you. Michelle, I guess what Glenn's got you in the closet, or you're not in the same room?
Yeah, we're in different rooms because he's kind of hosting today, so we thought we'd split up. So my brag is our only granddaughter for the short time being here is just started school yesterday. So she had her first day in first grade at a private German school down in Dallas. So she's all excited.
That's pretty cool. I guess I'll say our guest speaker, Ed, if you want to give us a brag today.
Yes, I would just like to brag on the citizens and the residents of Plano They have been very supportive of the police department during this pandemic, the protests, everything that's been going on, and we just love the support that we get here. Because I don't see that in some police departments across the country right now. So we're just, those are the folks I want to brag on.
Thank you for that. Okay, I think that's everybody, Glenn, so back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mike, Mr. Sergeant at Arms. So to start us off today, Fred's going to lead us in a prayer. So Fred, will you pray for us, please?
I will. Would you bow with me, please? Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to use the technology that we have to come together and to be a club again. We thank you for not only for the rain, for all the other blessings that you bestowed upon us. We ask that you will bless each family that's represented here. We ask that you will keep your arms around and protect our first responders, our police, our fire. Be with our medical professionals as they battle the coronavirus. Be with our children as they go back to school, whether it's virtual. And be with our young people as they go to college and start a new chapter in their life. Again, we thank you for our blessings. We thank you for our partnership with the Douglas community and all the other volunteer groups and nonprofits that we work with. We uphold the motto of Rotary of service above self. And we put our trust and faith in you. Again, we thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed. Amen.
Thank you, Fred. And then Camille, you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I have a flag here we can look at.
Okay.
So please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Camille. Okay, a little bit of club business here for just a few minutes. I'm going to start with Alex likes to do a little bit of something every week on the Rotary Foundation. So I'm going to see if I can do this. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, so you may know there are now 7 areas of focus that the Rotary Foundation has. The new one is at the bottom, but we can go through these: peace and conflict prevention and resolution, disease prevention and treatment, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, economic and community development, and the new one is supporting the environment. And I have a couple of paragraphs I want to read about that I saw on Rotary.org. The Rotary Foundation trustees and Rotary International Board of Directors have both unanimously approved adding a new area of focus supporting the environment. More than $18 million in Foundation Global Grant funding has been allocated to environment-related projects over the past 5 years. A distinct area of focus to support the environment will give Rotary members even more ways to bring their positive change to the world and increase our impact. Foundation Trustee Chair Gary C.K. Huang says that the global population reaching near 8 billion, protecting the environment is increasingly important. It is time for us to use our collective resources to invest in a smart and efficient way to protect our environment, says Huang. We are qualified to take this initiative because we are a global group of problem solvers with diversified talents. So that's our new area of focus. We had in the past tried to come up with like an acronym or something, to try to say, how can we remember these 6 areas of focus? And now we have to redo that acronym because we got another one, 7th area. So be thinking about that so we can remember when we're out in the street trying to talk to people what that looks like. Okay, what other club news? So last week, we had our service project about the lunches we supported for the people experiencing homelessness. So last Wednesday, we delivered, the team, the club put together lunches for, I think, 54 lunches. We delivered to the assistance center in Collin County there on 18th Street. And we were there by like 11:15. And I mean, there were already 20 or 30 people there, and they saw lunches and the waters, and they were lining up. The reason that on Wednesdays, I don't know if we've talked about this in the past, but there's a group called Street Side Showers, and they meet there they go around the different region. On Wednesdays, they're in Plano, and they meet there at that assistance center in Collin County parking lot. And so they pull up this big trailer that's got showers in it. And so people can come in and take a shower. They've got, soaps. We had, as part of our deliverables, we had some razors and deodorant and other things too. So thank you everyone for helping with that. We've done that, 2 or 3 times a year, and that continues to be a great project for us. Also, not a service project, but last Friday we had I think our second kind of Zoom happy hour. Thank you, Lisa, for heading that up. But I think Alex said there were 13 people on that, and it went really well. So anything to add to that, Lisa?
We had a great turnout. We learned what kind of foods everyone likes to make and cook, and weird foods you've eaten, and all kinds of just random things. So now I have my eye on who I want to cook for me. Camille.
Camille.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you for setting that up, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So upcoming service projects, you can get all these on our website and the e-news that was sent out yesterday. But something that's kind of new is on the 3rd Thursdays of each month, and I think next Thursday is the 3rd Thursday, we've started something with Greek Isles. And for those that don't know, Greek Isles Restaurant in Plano is where, pre-COVID, that's where we meet, but we haven't been able to meet there. So we want to support them. So if you go and have food there or takeout or whatever and mention Rotary, they'll donate 15% to the Rotary Foundation. So that's going to be every Thursday, every 3rd Thursday of the month. So we'd like to try to support Greek Isles when we can. This Saturday, I might get David to say a couple of things, but this Saturday is our delivering meals to the Douglas community. Minnie's supplies the meals, and we walk up and down the streets of the Douglas community. And I know we did this 2 weeks ago while we also had that big fair there at that Shiloh church and had lots of things. But David, this meets at the Boys and Girls Club, right?
Actually, we changed it. It is going to stay at Shiloh.
Okay.
Yeah, stay at Shiloh. So everybody will meet at Shiloh and go from there.
Okay. And we're expecting like 2 hours, right? Probably.
Yes, exactly. And last time Minnie's delivered the food, this time we'll have to pick it up. So a lot of people were prepared to help us with trucks and trailers. If they can do it on this Saturday, that will be great. We'll meet at Minnie's at 9:30 and pick up the food and meet at Shiloh and start separating it and passing it out with the volunteers that show up.
Okay. Okay, good to know. I have a truck, one truck. Mike's got a truck, other trucks. Alex has a truck. We can get it done. Also, we have the Shoe Drive Challenge to donate shoes for local international community development. I think that goes through the end of the month. Is Tamara, are you on? Is that right?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm here. We actually have already started.
Yeah.
Typically, it starts September 1st through October 31st. But we've pretty much already started. So take your old used shoes to Greek Isle, drop them off. Be sure to sign up on the Sign Up Genius so we'll know that you did it, and share it with all of your organizations and friends and family and everyone. We just want to get as many shoes as we can. and get this going.
Thank you, Tamara. There's others. I think we're on our, I lose count, 7th or 8th service project since this Rotary year has started. And we're like in the, what, 6 weeks in or 7 weeks in. So a lot of service projects and a lot of good things going on from the club. And thank everyone. And when we were at the Douglas Center for that fair and handing out the food last time, I think we had 48 volunteers or something. A lot of people. It was amazing, amazing. So thank you again for that. Okay, we're a little early, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker here for the day. Plano Chief of Police Ed Drain. I don't have a long one. I got a medium one, Ed, I'm going to go through. Chief Ed Drain started his law enforcement career with Plano in '94. He worked in patrol, neighborhood police unit, traffic investigations. He's also served on the SWAT team and the bomb squad. He progressed through the ranks as a sergeant, lieutenant, and captain. In '06, Chief Drain was appointed as the assistant police chief, a position he held for 10 years. During that time, he managed all operational areas of the department, including patrol services, criminal investigations, and support services. Chief Drain was formally selected as police chief for the Amarillo Police Department, and in February of this year, Chief Drain returned to Plano to serve as police chief. And prior to his career in law enforcement, he served in the U.S. Army as an explosive ordnance disposal officer. And between April '04 and April '05, he was recalled to active duty and assigned to the 3rd U.S. Army Corps in Iraq, where he was awarded the Bronze Star and other decorations. Retired from the Army Reserves in 2007 as a lieutenant colonel with 24 years of active and reserve military service. And I don't have it here, but I think he's also a member of Plano Metro, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So I'm turning it over to you. Welcome. Please help me welcome Chief Ed Drain.
Well, first let me say hello, everyone. And I am really glad to be back in Plano. I had a good experience up in Amarillo, but this is home and I am really glad to be back here. I also want to say hello to some old friends, my old boss, LaShawn and David and Alex. Some of these guys I know, from just previous encounters, but hello to everyone out there today. And I appreciate this opportunity to get in a chance to speak with you guys. And let me also say too, the work that you guys are doing in particular with the Douglas, I see you doing other service projects, but I was out Saturday before last, I guess it was, for the backpack drive. And I was really impressed with all the things you guys had set up there with minis and the COVID-19 testing. And I thought it was a really good event. I think you guys are smaller than my club, Plano Metro, but you punch well above your weight. So keep up the good work, guys. So the first thing I'd like to just talk to you guys about is the COVID-19 situation, the impact that it has had on the police department. I arrived here on February the 24th, was my first day of work. And we weren't quite in COVID mode yet. Maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, we opened up our EOC. Our emergency manager at the EOC wanted to go back and track a timeline on when the city started having meetings and conversations and calls related to COVID. And so she says, well, let me pick a date. She says, I think we really started cranking down on everything around February 24th, which was the day that I started. So I don't know if I brought COVID here or not, but it has been really busy very ever since then. Like I said, this is not the transition that I expected, but we just have to adapt and overcome and press on. So COVID for our department, just like your businesses and your families and school, it has caused us to make a lot of changes in how we do business, but we are still answering all of our calls for service. We are investigating all cases. We haven't stopped addressing any of those things. We have about 200 civilian employees, a little over that. We put almost half of them were able to work from home. We were able to get computers. Our IT department did a great job of getting computers configured. And those guys have been much more efficient than I had anticipated. I've had friends and relatives who have been working at some parts of the time from home for years. But when you see governmental entities and school districts, especially schools, being able to turn on a dime so quickly and get up and running has really been impressive to me on how everybody has adapted to this crisis. But it has had an impact. we've had a total of about 15 employees who have tested positive for COVID. Most of those, almost all of those were sworn officers. We only had one who was seriously ill. He was in the hospital. He was in ICU. He is out of the hospital now. He was doing better, but he still hasn't been able to come back to work. He's still having some respiratory issues. We've got 2 positive employees right now. We have been continuing to train our recruits. We just can't stop training. Our training pipeline for a police officer from the day we hire a trainee until they're ready to go work out on their own is about 11 months. So we can't afford to stop recruiting or training. But we always have some recruits at the academy and some in field training. This week, or actually over the weekend, we had, for the first time, we had the first recruit that tested positive. There are a lot of things that you can do with training, just like with the schools where you can do social distancing, but you can't teach someone how to do handcuffs and some of those things. I mean, they got to get close and personal. So we did have one employee that tested positive. We had to put 8 other recruits off, but they are not going to lose any training whatsoever. We've got a good online platform we're using. So we're just going to do classroom training for those guys over the next couple of weeks until we can get them back in class. So again, like I said, we've had a total of 15 that have tested positive, 2 including the 3 including the recruit are off work at this time. We've had to put off a lot more employees than that over time because of the protocol we're using. If someone is in close personal contact with someone within 6 feet for 15 minutes, then they also have to take off work too. So that's the thing that's really been hitting us hard. Over the 6 months that we've been in this, probably about 100 employees at different times have had to take off because they've been in close contact with others. But overall, though, we're able to adapt, and we're doing well. We've got all the supplies we need, all the masks, and we've got a good protocol going on. And the city is bringing in this outside auditing company that kind of specializes in our procedures. They're coming in this week to make sure that we've got the best protocols in place for keeping our employees safe. We still have some of our civilian employees that went home. We're bringing them in kind of on a A/B schedule. So half of them are in part of the week and half of them are in other parts of the week. But even with some of our civilian employees, our jailers, our crime scene technicians, some of those guys, they can't take off at all. They're just like the sworn officers. They just can't work from home, and we've just got to come in and get it done. But the other big issue I wanted to talk to you about were the protests. At the Plano Police Department, we, like everyone else, there's not a single employee, civilian or sworn or male or female, that thought what happened to George Floyd was in any way right or necessary. It was a crime. It should not have happened, and it has put a stain on all of law enforcement. And the impact of that, we can see with the images of that. It didn't just have a regional impact or even a national impact. We've had those protests reverberated around the world, and it has really been stunning on what's going on. And as you know, we've still got some places where people have been protesting steadily in the northwest part of the country, Seattle, Oregon, some of those places. Chicago, they're still protesting, even now today, 60, 70 days later. So we did have some protests in Plano. We had 2 or 3 pretty big ones, over 1,000 people. Most were in the 100s. But I recognize that the founding fathers put the First Amendment in the Constitution, not for people to praise their government, but to protest their government. And people certainly have a right to do that, even if they're shouting negative and bad things about the police. So as a result of that, though, we recognize people's First Amendment right to protest. We didn't have to gas anybody. We didn't have to arrest anybody. No fights, no property damage, no officers were hurt, no looting. We didn't have to call any outside backup forces to come boots on the ground. We do have contingencies in place if we need that, but we didn't have to bring anybody in to help us. And those, for the most part, have died down now. We hope that we've still got an election coming up, and we'll see what happens. But since about July or so, early parts of July, we haven't had any major problems with protests going on in our city. And again, as I said earlier, our citizens overall have been very supportive of us. There has not been a trend, at least that I'm aware of, where people are talking about defunding the police. I don't think that, I can't speak for the city council or the city man, my bosses at city management, but I don't think that there is any discussions like that. That's not something I go to bed at night worrying about that's going to happen in Plano, where we see in Austin, 1/3 of their budget was cut. But again, that is Austin, not Plano. So that's what's going on on the protest front regarding so we've got the protests, we've got the pandemic. Those are some kind of new things, but we've still got our regular mission that we've got to do. We focus on crime. We want to keep that down. As I'm sure all of you know, Plano is approaching 300,000. I think we're going about 290 right now, but I suspect after the census, it's going to be over 300. And I think anyone would be hard pressed to find any city in America that's got close to 300,000 people that has a crime rate as low as ours. Our crime rate for this year, I guess actually this is through the end of July, down about 1.1%. So pretty flat from last year, but last year was a very, very low crime rate. To have fewer than 20 offenses per 1,000 residents is just, it's phenomenal. And so our violent crime is up less than 1%. Property crime is down almost 2%. So overall, like I said, we are, overall, our crime numbers are down. And when I say crime numbers, we're looking at 8 offenses that we look at, 4 property crimes and 4 violent crimes. The violent crimes are murder, aggravated assault, sexual assault, and murder, aggravated assault, aggravated robbery, and sexual assault. Those are the crimes. And then our property crimes are burglary, auto theft, larceny, and arson. And so those are when you look at crime, when people are comparing cities, those are typically the offenses that they're looking at, something called the Uniform Crime Report numbers, or if they're talking about just violent crime, it's just those 4 violent crimes that I'm talking about if they're comparing violent crime. But in both of those categories, we are doing very, very well for the size of our city. And we haven't seen any major upticks in that. We were actually seeing our calls for service and things go down from about March, April, May. But around June, July, things have been picking up pretty good again. People are getting out more. So now one of the other areas that we track, though, of our performance measures, one is crime rate. The other one is traffic safety. When it comes to traffic safety, our traffic crashes are down about 30% because of fewer people being on the road. So those are traffic crashes that are reported to us. Now, one anomaly with that number, though, is, and this can sometimes happen, we're already at 12 people who have died in traffic crashes this year. Now, in comparison, we had 7 or 8 people that died in traffic crashes for all of 2019. We're already up to 12 this year. And part of that is because we had one traffic crash, probably just maybe the week before I started, had 3 young men in the car, and of course, alcohol was involved, driving at high rates of speed, and then all 3 of those young men unfortunately died. We had another accident up here on 75. Somebody again driving extremely high rate of speeds, hit a bump and ended up flying over the highway, and then took 2 lives in that one. So, so we're hoping to get that stabilized. We are seeing where alcohol is a factor with people out drinking and driving, and so we're going to continue to press hard on drinking and driving in the city. Let me just go back to our crime numbers real quick. We had our first homicide in the city, as I'm sure most of you probably know, on August the 1st. We had a mother who was a scientist and a researcher, a jogger, a musician, and she was killed on a jogging path, on a very popular jogging path here in our city. And we were able to get a warrant and get that case closed out, at least on the investigation side, just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so we've been increasing security on those trails, but and people have asked, well, what can we do to keep them safe? And we're lucky here in Plano. We have a great Parks and Recs program, but we have 83 parks in our city. We have over 4,000 acres of parks, 70 to 80 miles of trail systems here. And there's no way we can have enough people or cameras to be able to cover all of those safely. So what we ask people to do is make sure that they're using, good best practices, good common sense when they're out riding and biking, and to be careful out there. But we're doing whatever we can to try to keep our trails and our parks safe for folks out there. But I've lived here a long time, not counting the 3.5 years I was in Amarillo, and we've never had anything like that on our trails before. And we don't think that there is a threat out there now, obviously, because we've got somebody in jail with a $10 million bond. So that's going on. The other performance measure that we track is our response times, and we're doing real well on those. It's 8 minutes for emergency calls, 8 minutes for just non-emergency calls, 5 minutes for emergency calls, and we are slightly below that in all of our categories. So we've been able to to meet our response times in this environment. And it's actually been a little bit easier because there have been fewer calls for service and less traffic out on the roadways. We often get asked, I get asked, are we seeing an uptick in domestic violence calls and child abuse calls? And we have not. Those have been flat, just like our overall crime numbers, even when, well, and I guess a lot of the kids are still at home because most of the schools are in remote learning right now. But we have not seen any upticks in violence against kids or domestic violence or anything of that nature during this pandemic. So, so those are the issues I wanted to talk to you about. What questions do you guys have of me now? Anybody?
I have
I have one. You mentioned there was some protesting. I didn't see any. Where was that? Where were those protests at?
Well, we had probably the first big one that we had. It was a group that we worked with Grace Outreach Church. It was supposed to be a static protest. In other words, they weren't supposed to march. And we even tried to get them inside, and they did. And I spoke to that group inside to several hundred of them. But then they wanted to go outside and be seen. That's a very busy intersection. That's Parker and Preston Road. And so they were out there with their signs. And there was a lot of traffic that goes through that intersection. And they were there in that corner where Grace Outreach was. And just out of the blue, they just decide they're going to start marching down Preston Road, south of Preston Road. And so we can't let them get hurt. So we just have to adapt, and we can't make them get off the road either, because by that point now there was up to over 1,000 of them. And so we just worked with them. And like I said, they took over one intersection, and I told them they can't do that. They actually made a big loop, and they took over Dallas Parkway at Parker, and they wanted to just stand there. And I said, I can't let you do this. We've got a hospital right down the street. They asked for 8 minutes and 43 seconds, and I said, I can give you that, and then you got to go. And they did. And then they started marching back down to the church. They took over Preston and Parker when they got back, and can't let you do this because we've got. And then when they realized that people couldn't get to the daycare center to pick up their kids, I mean, we were eventually able to get them out of the roadway. So those can be kind of touch and go. You have to negotiate. You can't just go in and just order and demand. You have to realize people are protesting. It is going to create some inconveniences for other people, but you also have to draw a line at some point too. For example, when they were back down at Dallas Parkway at Parker, several of them tried to go up on the elevated portion, and they flat can't do that. There's no way we can protect them or stop traffic up on the toll road. And so, if they were going to try to do that, they were going to have to go to jail. But we were able to convince them not to go up there and to go try to take over that part of the roadway, because that's a whole different thing than trying to take over an intersection, even a big one. But we had a big one there. We had, you guys mentioned minis earlier for providing food for some of your projects. And this wasn't really a protest. It was more of a rally because obviously Cheryl Jackson is not going to, have something where there's going to be a lot of violence or anything. But she had an event at City Hall that was huge. I mean, it was, again, well over 1,500 people. There was a march. It was planned. We knew the route. It was a short march from City Hall down 15th Street up to Avenue G, and then back down 18th Street back to City Hall. And so we were able to do that. The problem with those kind of marches, though, is, man, you got those trains there. But we had DART in our EOC, and we were able to get them to stop the trains because those lines are so long before they can cross those tracks. And you got to cross those tracks twice, once at 15th Street and once at 18th Street. But again, then we had some smaller protests that generated over in Haggard Park downtown, and they would march, around downtown someplace and stop and shout and do some things. But again, no violence, no property damage or anything like that. So it all worked out so far. No gas. We didn't have to use any gas on anybody like some of the other cities. So those work well.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
They're both related to mental health. I'm curious about the training that officers receive in helping, situations that might deal with community members having mental health struggles. And then I'm also curious about what kind of support and resources the officers get, particularly after a traumatic event. For example, I'm sure the officers who worked the recent homicide, you know, maybe grappled with some mental health issues thereafter. So can you talk about both of those things?
Sure, I can. Probably around 2010 or so, we started a program here in Plano. I was the assistant chief at the time. It was called Crisis Intervention Team Training. It's a 40-hour mental health course, and 40 hours obviously doesn't make one an LPC or a licensed clinical social workers, but 40 hours is almost getting close to about the time of actual classroom time you would get in one semester of college. And so we started that program to train all of our officers on CIT. And we knew it was going to take several years because, you know, 40-hour block for us, we already have to do a lot of other training throughout the year. And to get that in, it was going to take several years. But certainly before I left in 2016, we were already at the point to where within 2 years of getting out of the academy, all of our guys were CIT. When I say all of them, all of the uniformed officers. So if you worked in patrol, neighborhood police officers, definitely our school resource officers, our crisis negotiators, all of those guys got CIT training. Since then, 2 years ago, I believe, the state legislature mandated that this course be provided to new officers. And so we've just decided to go ahead and put it in the basic academy now. It's what we do here. So now our officers are putting it in the basic academy, and occasionally you'll have a sergeant or somebody who will come back to the field who didn't get it before, and we may have to schedule a class, but we're well over 96, 97% of our uniformed officers having this training because we had started so much earlier than before the legislature mandated it. So that's one thing. The other thing is this week, as a matter of fact, we are selecting 2 what we call CIT, mental health / homeless officers. That is going to be their full-time duty, is to try to respond to these hard calls. We're not going to be able to stop our regular patrol officers from responding to some of these calls, especially with mental illness, because it's just too many. But for the ones that we know, the regulars, the hard cases, we're going to try to have these guys that are mental health / homeless officers respond to some of those cases. Our neighborhood services director, Lori Schwartz, has 2 positions in the budget to also help with that on the services side. And then we've also established a partnership. We've had a partnership with LifePath Systems for years, of course. They are our behavioral health authority here in Collin County. But we put in for a joint grant, I don't know, back in maybe April, May, to get 2 mental health professionals that would actually ride in the car with these mental health officers that we have. It's called a co-responder model. It was something that we also got a grant when I was in Amarillo to do, and you know, I got to assess it for about 2.5 years that I was up there, and I think that it works well. So you've got a police officer responding, and then you've got a civilian, and you know, if the situation is relatively safe, you let the civilian take hold, or you let the police officer get it safe, and then you let the mental health professional take over, because they've got a lot more training than 40 hours, you know, than our guys do. And then also in our office, we have a licensed clinical social worker. She doesn't typically respond to the field. Her job is on some of our people that we have to respond to frequently. And because sometimes what we see is we put them in the hospital, they get out of the hospital, they've got a treatment plan, they've got their meds, and as long as they stick with that, they're fine. But then sometimes they'll decide to stop taking their meds because it affects their hair, weight loss, their libido, whatever, and they stop taking it because they feel better otherwise, and then they slowly fall off the rails again. So her job is to try to link up with the family, link up with that person when they get out of the hospital, and then keep them on track and try to work with their service provider. So, and we've had that in place for a number of years, maybe 5 or 6 years that we've had Nicole working on that side of it. So we realize the importance of mental health. You know, 1 in 5 homes out there, there's somebody in that home that has a mental illness. We know that. We work closely with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, LifePath Systems, our behavioral health authority, and we know we've got to pick up our game to be able to even more so. Now, I hear a lot of talk across the country, a lot of law enforcement journals I read where people are talking about defunding the police in terms of taking some of that responsibility from police and giving it to people who specialize more in homelessness and mental illness. And I, as a chief, I'm sure most of us would gladly if there was somebody who could go take over all of that, we would just gladly give up that mission altogether. My fear, though, is that, You know, when someone people don't call the police because they see someone mentally ill and they're just walking in circles talking to themselves. They're not dangerous when they're doing that. They call the police when people are a danger to themselves or others, typically. When they are in the road, naked with syrup on, and, you know, and now they're walking in circles. When they're up on a bridge or up on an overpass and they're threatening to jump, that's when they call the police. And whether we have civilians respond to that or not, you're still going to need the police respond just for the traffic situation or whatever. And so, so I don't think that that the police are going to be able to get out of this business totally, even if we are able to bring in and provide more funding to service providers out there who can do a better job at this than we can. And we acknowledge that we are not experts in mental health or homelessness or finding people homes, but we are 24/7, and sometimes when we are called, it's because the person is in crisis at the moment. And then we are pretty good at handling a crisis. Now, the long-term piece, we're obviously going to need some help with that, and we realize that. Now, regarding our officers, we have, and since I've been back, it has gotten even more robust. We've got a really good peer support program set up. The city of Plano has a pretty good employee assistance program available for employees to use as a part of the benefit package that we have here. We've got a good program set up with our chaplains who have been trained in this crisis incident debriefing. It's a technique where you can bring a group together once they've responded to a homicide. And I tell you, the thing that gets cops and even our civilian employees the most, because we go out on, unfortunately, a lot of calls, and they're not all homicides, but car wreck victims, suicide victims. And I don't mean to say the guys get callous, but they see dead bodies, you know. But when you see children, that's the thing that has been my experience, both in the military and as a police officer, where we really, really have to keep our eye out on those officers, because they may not even realize it until months later that it begins to manifest itself and cause problems. Again, that has been my issue. So, but certainly for the folks that responded to this homicide, we did provide critical incident stress debriefing. And for many of the officers, they seem to do okay. But when they see something really terrible that's happened to a child, though, we really got to keep our eye out on it. So we've got our licensed clinical social worker here. She can't provide direct counseling to the officers, but she is a good resource. She serves as an advisor to our peer support team. And so that's basically what we have in place to address those issues. Anybody else? Any questions? Man, you guys are great. Easy.
Keith,
Hey.
I have to ask, you know, when I look at the way that we do our business here, the police department does this business in Plano, you know, when I read headlines and I hear stories about other cities, I just don't ever expect to see those things in Plano. I always think that it's because Plano's police department and its leadership is very proactive in terms of how you are visible in the community, how you train, how you're educated. But what would you say makes the difference in Plano in terms of things that we just don't typically see here, where we see them in, you know, with other communities and in the headlines so frequently?
Yeah, good question. You know, there's no police chief that can't guarantee that one of their officers is not going to go out and go do something like a George Floyd situation. I mean, we've got 22, 23-year-old folks coming in here. They got cars, they got guns, and we know, you know, with some young people, those frontal lobe isn't fully developed until they're 26, and we're hiring them much younger than that. So we have to make sure we do everything we can to prevent that. And I think the first thing we do is we have to start out with our training. We talked about some of that earlier, but TICO training is about, TICO is our, well, the first thing we start out is, I think, with its policies. And every police department has a lot of policies, but how do you know they're the right policies? And even if they are the right policies, how do you know that they are adhering to those policies? What we do in Plano is we are an accredited police department. We're accredited by something called CALEA, that is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. It is the highest accreditation body in the United States for law enforcement. There are about 18,000 police departments in the United States, fewer than 1,000, around 800 or so, maybe 4 or 5% of police departments out of that 18,000 are CALEA accredited. They've got over 400 standards, and we meet all of those standards. And they don't just come and say, hey, okay, you've got these policies. We actually have to show proof that we are complying with those policies. So that's the first thing. You got to make sure you have good policies. I've been shocked at the number of agencies that have had big announcements where they come out and say, yeah, we're getting rid of the chokehold, or we are putting in our policy that police officers have a duty to intervene. And I'm like scratching my head. You know, who still has this stuff in their policies these days? So that's the first thing is policies. And then I think the next one is probably training. We have to make sure that both with our basic academy that we've got the training, and we've got to have good ongoing training. Our Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, that's the governing body for all of law enforcement in Texas. You know, they've got the basic academy training that they have. It's about 17, 18 weeks. Our training for our recruits, just the academy training, is about 32, 34 weeks. So we go well above what they require. We put that CIT training I told you about. It doesn't have to go in your BPOC. They can have up to 2 years to do. We decided to make sure we go ahead and get that in our class. We cover things like implicit bias and diversity. We put all these things in our BPOC class to make sure that our guys are getting both those soft skills along. Yeah, they've got to learn how to defend themselves. They got to learn how to drive, do tactical driving. They got to know how to shoot a pistol and a rifle and use a taser, but we have to make sure we've got enough work in there on those soft skills, and we do that. And so training is a big component of it. I think another one is we have to make sure we're taking advantage of technology out here, and we have mobile cameras in all of our cars. We have all of our officers who have body cameras. There was a young lady who was killed in Kentucky. Some guys doing a drug warrant, kicked in her house, kicked in her door to go serve this warrant. Okay, now she's killed, and there's a police officer shot. It's kind of a messy deal. I don't know all the facts, but it's inexcusable that you would, the department has body cameras, that you would go kick in somebody's door. Number one. And number two, you're going to serve this warrant without body cameras. Just basic things. So our policy is we have body cameras. You're required to have those cameras on during any law enforcement contact that you have. There are exceptions made if you go into someone's house and obviously someone is naked, then you indicate on there why you're turning it off. You let that person get clothed, then you turn it back on, and then you document that in your report. Same thing if you're at the hospital. Sometimes some sensitive things can be discussed, HIPAA-related things, and you may want to turn it off for that, but you have to turn it back on once those discussions are over. So you got to take advantage of that technology. You got to take advantage of technology in the car so that if someone complains and says our officer was over here doing things, we can go back and find out exactly where our officer was or that vehicle was at any given time. So we've got that kind of technology as well. And then the final thing you have to do is have good hiring standards. Again, TCO, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, they set those hiring standards for all of law enforcement in Texas. And we well exceed those when it comes to doing our background checks, drug screens. We test for drugs well above what they're required to do. But the biggest thing I think that we have that most agencies don't have is we have a college degree requirement for most of the officers coming to work for the Plano Police Department. So unless you are a veteran, military veteran, or unless you have experience at another police department, you have to have a bachelor's degree to work in Plano. And even if you do have that experience that I talked about, you still have to have 60 college hours, which is well above the requirements for most police departments out there. We've been getting a lot of junior military officers. They're coming out of the military. They don't have to have a college degree. They only need 60 hours. But of course, they're junior military officers. Most of them also have a college degree. So as a result, about 75% of all of our sworn officers have a college degree. And that's going to be higher by far than most police departments in the United States. Now, when it comes to a college degree, is there information to show that police officers with a college degree make better cops? It depends on how you look at it. I mean, I know plenty of good cops here at Plano and Amarillo, where I came from, who don't have a college degree, and they are excellent police officers. But we have to look at things though in the aggregate when you get to be a department our size. And in that, I think that they do. There is data that shows that officers who have a college degree have less of a tendency to use force when there are other options available. There's also data to show that police officers who have a college degree receive fewer sustained complaints than officers who don't. So from that standpoint, we can say that. But I think going back to LaShawn's point, one of the reasons that you don't hear about Plano as often as some of those other departments is because we have high hiring standards here. So those are the 4 components: good policies, good training, good technology, and good hiring procedures. I think are the 4 key things that I would say. If we can do those, it's less likely. I can't guarantee, but it's less likely we're going to have a situation like a George Floyd.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chief Jane, for speaking to us today. I know you know this, you're a Rotarian. One thing we do in our club is, for the speakers, is we present them with a certificate of appreciation.
Awesome.
In appreciation for your time and program, we will donate $10 in your name to the Rotary's Polio Plus Fund. And as you know, together with the 2-to-1 matching funds from the Bill and Melinda Gates, and then the 1-to-1 matching funds for the Rotary Foundation, your $40 will provide polio vaccine for about 66 children.
Great.
Well, thank you again very much for your time today.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, we just got a couple minutes here. Just a couple of things for next week. Carolyn, I see you're still on. We will be voting and inducting for Carolyn next week. And then for Aretha, we'll be voting on her next week. And the program is actually, Alex is going to talk about Rotary and it's bringing technology to us. So that'll be next week's program. As we close out here, Jim, let me share my screen one more time. I'm almost getting good at this. Let's see. Probably spoke too soon.
Hey, Ed?
Yes, this is it.
There it is. Jim, would you lead us in the 4-way test?
Okay, number 1, is it the truth?
True.
Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build
Goodwill and better friendships.
Number 4, will it be
Will be beneficial to all concerned.
Rotary.
Rotary.
Rotary. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you.